Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Pivotal Labs, transforming how the world builds software. PivotalLabs.com. Pivotal Tracker, the award-winning agile project management tool. PivotalTracker.com. And Pivotal Web Services, the agile platform for the agile team. Run.pivotal.io. And by InVision. Find out why so many hot startups are using InVision to prototype, present, and collaborate on design in real time. Sign up for a 90-day free trial today at InVisionApp.com/twist. And by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. And by AWS Activate, the Amazon Web Services Startup Program. It's easy to start and scale your business with AWS. Visit aws.amazon.com/activate.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. We're here live at Pivotal Labs. And my guest today will be Tim Ferriss. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. It's me, your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on the Twitter at Jason, and you can follow the show at TWiST Startups. We've been doing this for 480 episodes or so, and I am exhausted. Literally, I'm so exhausted from doing this. You've done 30 podcasts, all right? Call me when you get another 400 under your belt, Tim. It's hard. And we're doing this event at Pivotal Labs, which is a great consultancy that has worked with everybody from Path to Twilio to TaskRabbit, ShareThrough, ModCloth, many others. And they help people, especially VCs and founders, build their startups faster, better, all that kind of stuff. And they've helped me with a ton of stuff, and we've invested in things together. Yeah, and people don't even know this, but they kind of built Tinder. I'm probably not supposed to say that, but I think they built Tinder back in the day, right? I can say that. It's allowed, I think. So anyway, like one of the hottest apps was built by these guys. I mean, they do a really great job. Anyway, today on the show, Tim Ferriss, who I've wanted to have on the show for a long time, because you have become like this mega brand. Like, at what point, obviously you were born Tim Ferriss, but at some point you decided to be Tim Ferriss. How did you become Tim Ferriss? Because this is, like when you say Tim Ferriss, people know what that is. They're like, oh, Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Workweek. It's all very annoying. Like, I met you like 5 or 6 years ago. Nobody knew who you were. You're hanging out with Kevin Rose. And now
that's the secret right there.
Exactly. Hanging out with Kevin Rose. But now you're like this best-selling author. You're a household name. As much as a lot of the internet brands here. How did you become actually Tim Ferriss, the brand? When you look back on it, was it intentional?
I'll answer the last part first. So first, well, actually, I should thank you for inviting me on the show. Thank everybody for coming. It's really fun to be here. And you mentioned a couple of startups. I actually have quite a bit of background with Pivotal as well.
Oh, really?
So TaskRabbit. I was part of that entire sort of combination. And to answer the last part first, it wasn't intentional. In fact, I never had any plans to be a writer at all. And when I graduated from school, I don't know why my voice is cracking like Doogie Howser. We'll fix that in post. But I promised myself that I would never write anything longer than an email ever again because my thesis just about killed me. Clearly, that plan did not pan out for me. But I feel very certain, at least in my life, whenever I have a concrete 5 or 10 year plan, for that to be reliable, you have to aim well below your capacity and you cut off a lot of options. So it's really been sort of a 6 to 12 month serendipity. But the 4-Hour Workweek really opened the doors for me, opened all the doors. And that book, I think, took hold in part because it was one of the first books that focused on single author blogs primarily and blogs at large as a way of launching. And it's not because I had some amazing insight that nobody else had. In part, it was because my publisher would only let me touch stuff on the internet. and they wanted to control everything else. After being turned down 27 times, or 29, I forget.
You got turned down 27 times to do the 4-hour work week.
At least 27. It might have been more than that.
And what was the inspiration, though, for that book and for would you consider it like life hacking was something you were obsessed with? Or
I didn't.
Was it really around employment?
Well, I didn't think of it as life hacking, and I think hacking, as useful as the term can be, is kind of overused to the point of being somewhat meaningless these days. But I always wanted to be a teacher, never wanted to be a writer. I always thought I would come back and teach maybe 9th or 10th grade at some point because I had inflection points in those years that I can attribute to very specific teachers. And if I'd gone the other direction, like a lot of my classmates who are now dead because they OD'd or whatever, I wanted to be in a position to make that kind of difference, but I never thought I would write as a way of teaching. The book was put together really as a collection of notes as I went about trying to repair my own life and reinvent my life and career. And
what was so broken in your life that you needed to fix it?
The wake-up call was in 2004 or so when a long-term girlfriend broke up with me and gave me a sort of parting plaque that said business hours end at 5 p.m. And I still have this thing. It has a collage of, like, my head is cut out as a photo. It's on this sort of like paper body with a business suit running with a briefcase and papers flying out of it. And she's like, keep this for your own personal well-being. Goodbye. And I was caught.
You got dumped.
I got dumped hard. And I was it caught me completely unaware, which is ridiculous because I was working from whatever it was, 7 or 8 in the morning till like 9 p.m. because I was chasing time zones. I never had more financial success at that point, and I had probably never been more unhappy either. So that was, I think, the wake-up call for me.
What were you doing at that time?
That was a sports nutrition supplement company that I built up after obsessing over that stuff and self-experimenting for years and years on sort of legal and illicit and everything in between substances. And
did you find a favorite?
Which category?
Both.
Let's see. Yeah, sure.
Or a friend who's not someone. What is the term? Swish. Someone who is not me. Swim. What's the term?
I don't know. I've never heard that.
On message boards, they put like someone who is not me.
Oh,
as a disclaimer,
of course.
And then they talk about like the most amazing.
Which
trip.
by default means for me.
Which means
I would say I feel like people either swing. Both on the performance, on the recreational side, certainly people tend to swing towards stimulants or depressants, and people are pretty easily split in either direction. I've never been a depressant guy, and I had athletes introduce me to ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin, the ECA stack, which is extremely addictive, and that was my sort of performance drug of choice. It's highly addictive, and it took me more than a decade to get off of it. So I highly discourage
you. What is this exactly? You take an aspirin?
You combine ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin in a particular ratio that basically gives you a synergistic, in the most literal sense, effect whereby you're sort of combining 1 + 1 + 1 to equal like 20 biochemically, and it's very strong. On the illicit side, and I don't know if I'd call this recreational, but I'm a big fan of psilocybin mushrooms. I think they're very underutilized for therapeutic purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and by the way, all the tea you've been drinking, we took the liberty of putting mushrooms in those.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great second half of the show.
About 5 of you got ayahuasca, so we'll know who you are pretty quickly.
Yeah. That'll be the naked person running up and down the middle of the
Yeah, right.
So what is it about?
But the branding stuff, I've never really directly thought about building a personal brand, and that may be surprising for some people to hear, but I've thought about diversifying my identity at different points. So there was a point where I realized I didn't want to be the 4-hour workweek guy forever, and made the deliberate choice to run the risk of not doing 4-hour workweek 2, the 3-hour workweek, and selling it for a fortune to publishers, which I could have done, and doing the 4-hour body very deliberately so that I would have sort of 2 worlds to sit in if the 4-hour body were successful. And then there came a point where I said, you know what, I don't want to be the how-to author indefinitely, why don't I diversify my identity with angel investing, which started in 2007. And so I've made those choices along the lines so that my self-worth and perception of myself is not tied up in one basket. Much like an investment portfolio, I don't want to run the risk of becoming depressed if one area of my life collapses.
And you typically see people do this, don't you? Like, people become a victim of their own success, and then people want them to be Bob Dylan or Brad Pitt or the CEO of, Google or Uber or whatever it is. And they can't be anything else because the public wants them to be that so badly. And then if it doesn't work out, and folk music goes away, then all of a sudden you kind of, the bottom comes out from under you.
Definitely, yeah. You can get painted into a corner or paint yourself into a corner that way. And even if you're not successful, it's quite easy to do that. So by having sort of an undiversified set of skills. Now, that doesn't mean you don't focus. I think that both you and I can. We don't have to get into it right now, but I mean, if you look at sort of the power law distribution of startup returns, it's like, yeah, I mean, there are going to be one or two that bring back everything and more.
For sure.
So there are times to double down and really focus in one area, but I think that it's very easy for people to get trapped into more so definitely success, but they start to view themselves as their job title or as their company. And they immediately close off options. They put on blinders in a way that is unhelpful. There are helpful blinders, and then there are handicapping blinders, and you have to learn to distinguish between the two. And
what is it about writing that you find so powerful, and why do you think you're actually so good at it? Because I'm a writer, obviously, and I read your stuff, and there's very few people I read, and and you probably have this experience, I suppose, too, as a writer. Sometimes you read somebody and you're like, fuck, that person's good.
Yeah.
I wish I wrote that sentence. I wish I wrote that essay.
Yeah.
What is it that draws you to writing, and why do you think you've connected with people in that medium?
Sure. I think that I don't actually view myself as a very good writer, first of all.
Why?
Well, I read people like John McPhee, or I'll read Neil Stephenson, and I just want to cry.
They're more beautiful, complex,
just
textured,
the prose and the multiple threads that they can tie together in this beautiful package at the end, and you're just astonished that they're able to pull these things together. Cloud Atlas, another example. However, there's a difference between beautiful prose and effective writing, and there are different types of effective writing. What I think I try very hard to do is be a good teacher using words as my medium. And I think I'm very good at being an impatient reader. And that translates, at least for me, to being able to identify exactly, for instance, at what point in a business book is the reader going to be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you told me that to live with integrity and hire the right people. How do I hire the right people? And then they're like,
you have like a bullshit detector.
Right. And it's like, well, you have to ask, the questions like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, give me 4 more examples. And I'm very impatient for details in that way. So I can look at my own writing with the same lens. The second thing I would say is, I feel I cheat a bit with my writing in the sense that it's very hard for me to pontificate and come out with something very interesting. And there are many people who can write much more beautiful prose who will kill me in that department, but there are very few people who are willing to do the absurd, extreme experiments that I'm willing to do on myself. So if you want to have interesting writing, the cheat is just do really crazy / interesting stuff. And guess what? Like, if your grammar sucks and your prose is a little broken, as long as you have a clear voice and you have a strong position and you have an interesting story, people will read that and it will travel.
When we get back from this break, I want you to tell me about the craziest experiments you've done and the ones that you've decided were absolutely too crazy even for Tim Ferriss to attempt when we get back on This Week in Startups. Yes, InVision is one of my favorite products. What is InVision? When you're working with a designer and a team of developers and founders and the sales team and the operations people, everybody has some input on the product. And here's typically what happens. The designer responds to the founder who says, I want this, I want that, give me that. And then they put it in a chat room, like HipChat. We use HipChat, or you maybe use Slack, whatever. Or they email it, even worse, as attachments, PDFs. And then everybody starts taking comments, and nobody can keep track of the discussion. The discussion quickly spirals out of control, where everybody's got good ideas, bad input, great input, everything in between. Chaos ensues. Product does not ship. Startup dies. Gets beaten by a competitor. InVision saves you from having these insane discussions because the designer shares with you the new screenshots through InVision, which is software as a service. And they send you a link. I get a link here all the time. And I put it on my home screen. You know, when you click that button, add to home screen, it adds it to your home screen as an icon. Then I click on it, Inside 3.0 designs, Calm 2.0 designs, this investment designs, whatever. It shows me what the app will look like on my phone. Or if on my desktop, I can see the web stuff. And then I can click on certain spots and say, you know what, I think that this wording is wrong. Use this wording. And I can CC people in my organization. So I CC the person who's responsible for copy editing, but not the sales team and not the product team. I just want to write better copy for this one call out. You get the idea. Or let me see 3 treatments of that. Then they can resolve the issue. So it's structured communication for product design. InVision is the name of this product. And before they even became a sponsor of the program and a partner, we were using it. And that's the secret to this show and why this show has so many loyal advertisers. We say no to the e-cigarette companies or backup companies or lock up your social security numbers. We don't take their ads. We don't need their money. We don't want them as partners because I don't want to have to read a goddamn ad for a product that I don't use. I use and love InVision. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist. It's not expensive, and everybody uses it. Airbnb, Evernote, MTV, Adobe, Box, Zendesk, and Inside.com, my startup, and all my portfolio companies use it. In fact, 300,000 designers are using it. Why have I not invested in InVision App? I want to meet the CEO, and I want to invest in this company. InVisionApp.com/twist, InVisionApp.com/twist. It's a great product. You're going to love it. Let's get back to this amazing program. All right, everybody, welcome back. It's This Week in Startups live at Pivotal Labs. My guest today is the one, the only, Tim Ferriss. And of course, you know, he is the best-selling author of The 4-Hour Workweek, 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Chef. Actually, you know, I was talking to my CTO. He thinks your best book is The 4-Hour Chef. He is
awesome. That makes me happy.
This is what's really annoying. I'm like, because we became like friendly. We're not like good friends, but we sort of becoming friendly now. We kind of like each other.
We're past the few rounds of feeling it out. Yeah,
we're kind of feeling it out. There could be a bromance or something going on. I don't know. We'll see. It's not like going to be a Kevin Rose level thing. I can assure you of that.
He'll give you a run for your money.
Absolutely. That is the master of bromances. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Him and Gary Vee. But people are like, your fans are so in love with you. When people heard you're coming on the show finally, because your fans have been since episode 1 talking about you being on the show, and we're 5 years later, finally you're on the show, which is great, but they can't shut up about you. So why do people get so obsessive with you, do you think?
Well, I should, in fairness, point out that I think
the concept?
I think I have a very polarizing effect on people. So I either have fans who like my stuff, or I have people who think I have the most punchable face in the universe, and I remind them of like the frat boy jock who like slapped their girlfriend's ass in college, or I don't know what it is, even though that I was neither of those. But for whatever reason, I get the sort of very positive or very negative effect from people, which I'm fine with because I don't want to end up in the middle. But I think that I really try to be what you see is what you get. And I don't think that you've spent time with me socially.
Yeah.
I like how I am now is how I am when we're hanging out.
It's very authentic.
In person. And I try to be very open about my mistakes and my disasters. And it's like, oh yeah, we're coming to the experiments, like that idea to fly in stem cell growth factor from Israel to inject up and down my spine with like a black market chemist. Maybe not the best idea.
Whoa. Did you actually attempt that?
Yeah, I did. And I guess attempt is probably a good word for it because I had, in that same session, I broke the record for clinic injections. And this is with a very questionable guy who will remain unnamed, but who works with a lot of athletes who are taking, we'll call them extra supplementation for their performances. And I had a number of injuries I wanted his help fixing. And so I did have stem cell growth factor IGF-1, growth hormone, a bunch of things turned into a cocktail and injected in different sites in my body. I had some tennis elbow, and at that point we did something called PRP, which is very interesting. It's a platelet-rich plasma. So you take out a whole blood sample, in effect.
When was this, by the way?
This was probably 2008, 2009. I've done some stuff since then, but that was then.
Because this is something that Kobe Bryant has since done, the platelet thing.
Oh, yeah.
On his knee.
Absolutely. And I did PRP even prior to that. So,
right.
So the good news about being an early adopter with these weird edge cases in professional sports is you get to see things before other people. The bad news is that sometimes that means you're taking the arrows on the front lines,
right,
and being the human guinea pig who creates the list of known side effects include, you're the guy who's like, my liver hurts and my eyes are yellow. They're like, all right, let's note those two down.
So wait, the guy comes and he's got this cocktail of your platelet-rich blood.
Right, and they put that exactly. So they spin it out, and then they re-inject those growth factors into the site of injury to, among other things, sort of mimic an acute injury. So to marshal the body's resources and this injection to repair the site. The problem is they botched that injection, and they did it through a thicker area of skin on the elbow than they should have. Why is that important? Well, the reason it's important is that if you use alcohol or betadine or whatever to disinfect the surface of the skin, great, but if you push the needle through 5 layers of skin or very thick skin, then you can push bacteria from those internal layers into the joint capsule, which is exactly what happened. So I got a staph bacteria infection on my elbow, which it's became about as large as a football. Had to go to the emergency room. The guy who took fluid out of my elbow. I mean, people in the ER are supposed to be very clinical and literal and Spock-like. And he goes, "Holy shit!" Like they taught us in medical school that 30 cc's was the limit. We're taking 50 plus cc's out of here. What did you do to your elbow? And he just totally lost his composure, which I thought was hilarious.
So what happened to the tennis elbow?
The tennis elbow turned into a bigger problem than it was because I had I had to have surgery and get it cleaned out and blah, blah, blah. And
you can die from septic shock. I mean, if that bacteria got into your blood,
if I had waited a week, I could have had a systemic staph infection or an unusable elbow. Right. So the point is, let me do these experiments for you and then report back and tell you how to dial it down maybe 40% and what works and what doesn't.
And that is super compelling in reading and making.
Yeah, but PRP is something that's become much more mainstream. And I mean, there are things that I wrote about.
It's legal now. It came out of Germany.
Yeah,
and every NBA player is doing it every offseason.
Yeah, there are some pretty amazing effects that can be gotten from it, and a lot of the things that were written about in the 4 Hour Body, that was published in 2010 but written in 2008, 2009, are now becoming mainstream. So Gretchen Reynolds in the New York Times is talking about cold exposure and fat loss and adiponectin and all these things, or the microbiome and how things like Splenda can completely screw up your intestinal gut flora.
I saw you talking about these things, and it turns out also you were right that these artificial sweeteners make you fat because they spike your insulin, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, just because it's non-caloric doesn't mean that it won't have an effect on your pancreas or on your microbiome. And what's amazing is you can take, whether it's fecal transplants or otherwise, you can take these sort of destroyed intestinal microbiomes, transplant them to someone else, and they'll develop glucose intolerance. It's amazing. So I'm actually thinking I'm thinking about doing receiving a fecal transplant, like trying to identify like the Michael Jordan of microbiomes.
This might be the first time somebody said they were going to receive a fecal transplant on the show.
I'm quite sure that's very likely.
You're going to receive a fecal transplant means what? You're going to take the bacteria, in all honesty, you're taking the bacteria
that means
from fecal material and you're going to put it into your stomach.
It's like a reverse enema using someone else's crap. Yeah.
Is that quite literal, what you're going to do?
It's, I'm thinking about it because I have Lyme disease right now and I'm on massive amounts of antibiotics. I have been for about 6 months. So my microbiome is just scorched earth. I mean, it's a blank slate. Everything's dead. And so I'm thinking, it'd be kind of interesting as an experiment. There's a startup that I'm involved with that I've been fascinated for a very long time called Ubiome, and they do microbiome testing. So I was like, well, I actually sent in a sample recently of a bunch of different sites, not just fecal matter. And I was like, let me do a before and after. And the most interesting way to do that might be not to eat sauerkraut and do all this stuff, which takes a long time, but to do like the one-stop shopping and find this superstar of microbiomes and just do a fecal transplant.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
So is there something, because this question kind of started around, is there something you wouldn't do, but I
don't know how we
feel
got
like we've answered it.
Yeah, there are very few things that
Was
I
there
wouldn't
something
try.
you definitively said, though, like, this is too dangerous for Tim Ferriss? This is something that's not on the table.
Wingsuit. I was going to do wingsuit, which is a number of people have died in recent history where you jump out of a plane or off of a cliff and you have these suits that turn you into a flying squirrel, basically.
I've seen them.
I was going to do that, and the margin for safety or the margin for error there is just not great enough. So I've done some.
How does one learn to not die using a wingsuit, I wonder? Because I saw these people on 60 Minutes, and the first thing I said was, my God, these guys are amazing at this.
Yeah.
Like they were coming within 12 inches of the ground. And I said, gee, I wonder how many people have to hit the ground for you to learn how to not hit the ground.
Yeah, it's a steep learning curve, right? And I think the answer is you don't learn. It's just survivorship bias. It's like the 5-star mutual funds or whatever. It's like, no, you're only seeing the ones that survived.
Right.
That's why they all seem so awesome.
You shut the other ones down.
Yeah, you just don't. You generally, the guys who hit the wall, you don't see a second time.
And did you investigate and like go to somebody who jumps and does these? And do you think there's something about those people that we can all learn from, or are they just insane people?
I think the wingsuits. I think you can learn things from almost anyone, and that's something that you asked why I write. Part of the reason I find writing interesting is, number one, I think even if you never publish anything, it's just a great way to clarify and refine your own thinking.
Sure.
And for that reason, I will very often do what people call morning pages. I'll just wake up, have tea, and commit to writing 3 pages. And it could just be like, you know what? So-and-so's a pain in my ass. This really sucks. I don't want to check my email. It could be just bitching and moaning for 3 pages. But just as a way to like shake the dust out of the carpet that is your brain so that you can move on with your day and not obsess on that stuff is very helpful. Secondly, I find that being a writer, if you interact with other people, forces you to put your curiosity on steroids. And when you do that, you realize you could talk to anyone, the homeless guy, the janitor, the CEO, and you could take away a lesson from every one of those people if you dig well enough that could change your life. But you just have to know how to ask better questions and dig. So those are some of the reasons that I write. You could definitely learn something from the wingsuit people, and I did investigate this because I was doing a lot of experimentation with TV and filmed 12 or 13 episodes of television with the folks who did all the production for and still do for Anthony Bourdain, and we chose a whole slew of different activities. I'm hoping to resurrect this and rescue it. It's sitting on a shelf at Turner Broadcasting right now because the whole division got shut down. So it's just orphaned and sitting there. 13 finished episodes. It's killing me.
Tim Ferriss almost dies.
Right. Tim Ferriss. Will Tim Ferriss die? Question mark. That's
Tim Ferriss dead?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so we did look very closely at Wingsuit. Did a bunch of crazy stuff, got really badly injured in the parkour episode. No big surprise there. But I mean, I take this stuff very seriously, and I do a lot more due diligence and homework than people might expect, because they're like, oh my God, like that guy's so crazy and cavalier. He just walks in and has stem cell growth factor injected into the front of his forehead. And it's like, no, I don't.
It's not quite Steve-O. It's like Steve-O with research.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right. When we get back on This Week in Startups, I want to talk to you about your courageous angel investing and the massive portfolio that you've amassed. Stick with us. Yes. The Walker Corporate Law Group specializes in the representation of entrepreneurs like you, like me, startup companies, and he doesn't kill you with huge bills. You can very simply ask him, Scott, I got an M&A thing, I got to do some IP, I got to do a terms of service, I got to do an incorporation, I'm raising some money, I do a convertible note, whatever it is. And he'll say, hey, it's going to cost this amount. So then you can sleep well at night and not grind your teeth and worry about how much money it's going to cost. I can tell you in the past, I've opened up, legal bills and been shocked at what I've seen. So go ahead and give him a call, 415-979-9998, 979-9998, or email Scott at Walker Corporate Law. Scott at Walker Corporate Law. The Walker Corporate Law Group does a great job, and Scott is a great guy. I've referred lots of clients to him, as people know, and he does a great job. And he'll spend an hour or two. I've seen him do it many times with up-and-coming entrepreneurs, even if they're not clients. He just likes to hang out with entrepreneurs. That's his thing, just like it's my thing. And you can follow him on Twitter. Go ahead and follow @ScottEdWalker, @ScottEdWalker. Just a great guy, has a great firm, and they're doing great. They have tons of they don't have tons of lawyers there. They have an appropriate number of lawyers, but they have tons of experience, 10, 20 years experience. So he gets all these attorneys with a lot of big, law firm experience, and then they choose to work at the Walker Corporate Law Group because it's more fun to be at a boutique firm than this big firm grinding it out. And that's the great part about the Walker Corporate Law Group. Go ahead and email Scott at Walker Corporate Law, and let's get back to this amazing episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. If you're just joining us, Tim Ferriss is going to do a reverse enema, chose not to fly a wingsuit. And he's a great writer because he has a lot of great experiences in life.
I try.
When you see, though, I mean, if you look at the adventurer category, which I put you in, it has gotten to the level that I believe is sort of almost like recklessness, because you had Steve Irwin, right?
Yeah.
And he died tragically by
Stingray.
A stingray.
Which was just a really statistically incredibly unlikely. He wasn't even being reckless, which is the crazy part.
Well, I mean, they do call it a stingray.
Well,
I mean, it's got a stinger.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I don't know. How many people here are swimming with things with the name Sting in them? I mean, so this is, I think, what's different about your mind than the rest of ours is that the rest of us would say Stingray, maybe not,
Right, and I say, why not?
Exactly. Raptor, okay, Velociraptor, it sounds dangerous, so maybe I'll go with the kittens. But he died, right, he got the stinger right through his heart, died. And now you're seeing, I feel like almost the reality TV and the adventurer thing is the ante keeps going up. And I was watching 60 Minutes, and there is a phenomenal rock climber who does solo climbing.
Free soloing, yeah.
Free soloing. And that means you climb El Capitan without a rope.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching Discovery, and they have some knuckleheads swimming with bull sharks and tiger sharks.
Yeah, great whites as well.
Great whites with no cage, and the person doesn't know how to scuba dive. And then I go on the internet. I'm obsessed with you people who like do this risky shit, because there was a woman who rode the dorsal fin of a shark.
Yeah, hammerhead.
So you know all these people.
Yeah, she's a great free diver, by the way. It's an amazing video.
It's unbelievable. It's a free diver. And these free divers are dying. The wingsuit people are dying. Steve Irwin is dying. The kid who's climbing without a rope, he's going to die. It's statistically basically guaranteed. So do you feel like this category has like some kind of death wish? And what do you think it is about people who are drawn to these activities in all seriousness?
Yeah, sure.
Is it a death wish? And do you have that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't have a death wish at all. If I did, I've given myself thousands of chances to die, and I'm still here. So no, I don't have a death wish. I think there are different motivations for doing things that appear extremely dangerous or that are extremely dangerous. Most of the free solo climbers that I've met are extremely philosophically fascinating people who spend the vast majority of their time alone in training in, say, Moab, doing slacklining and climbing, and it's a monastic experience for them and existence for them. They're doing it for the sort of the purity of the experience. In most cases, I find that very interesting. And
why do you find that interesting?
Well,
what is it about
because
that?
I think partially. Good question. You've done more episodes of podcasting than I have. I think that it's partially because they value, and this is a cliche, but I don't think that means it's not accurate. They value the sort of the quality in their years, not the number of years that they have on the planet. So the life in your years, not the years in your life.
Right.
And there's a lot to be said for that. But there's a line where it becomes very reckless. And there are other people, though, perhaps of the jackass variety who, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I have a lot of respect for those guys, but there are people who will do anything to be on Jerry Springer, including ruin their own life and ruin the lives of people in their family. And that type of sort of attention whoring is not a motivation that I endorse or condone or recommend at all, because as you know, it's fleeting and the damage remains.
Yes.
So I do not find those people interesting. The freedivers also. And I think I think there's
Explain to people what free diving is, because there was just a 60-minute episode on this as well, and the woman who was going for the record, who they actually have dying on camera.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And it's pretty horrible.
She used the weight sled though, right?
The weight sled.
Yeah,
yes.
so there are different types of free diving. Free diving is diving without any type of oxygen support or scuba support. And there are different types of free diving. There's non-competitive free diving, and then there's competitive free diving. Competitive free diving is usually trying to break a record for breath holding or depth or something like that. And it's usually for depth if they're using a weight sled. When you start to add artificial assistance, and the weight sled, basically, they're strapping themselves into a weighted elevator that drops them down to a set depth underwater. Then they get released and they have to come back up. It's very dangerous, and you can it's easier to exceed your physiological capacity using external assistance than it is when you're just using fins. Right. And there's I think it's called Into the Blue. Can someone tell me? There's an amazing HD video that people have to check out. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. Of this guy jumping into this abyss and then finding his way back up as a freediver without any fins. I think it's no fins. It's amazing. The common thread between the free soloists and the unassisted freedivers, perhaps, which leads them to this like extremely refined philosophical point, is the extremity of their physical capacity and conditioning. To be in either of those sports, you have to be an absolute specimen, and you have to constantly think of the mind-body connection and pushing the limits of the connection between those two. So I heard an anecdote about one of these free climbers, one of the best, who was trying to break the record for free soloing El Capitan. Yeah. And he did it in some absurd number of hours, where people take multiple days to go up these pitches. And he, at one point, these two people were resting, and they're going to stay for the night. Yeah. And he kind of swung into their little enclave, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And he had no reps, and they're like, "Hey." And he's like, "Hey, can I borrow some chalk?" They're like, "Sure." And he grabs some chalk. He's like, "Cool, see you later," and just kept on going.
And they're like, "Oh my God,
that guy's going to die. We're the last people he's ever going to see."
We're the people who are sleeping on the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And we find this person crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's all, yeah, exactly.
Everything's relative.
So I think one of the guiding tenets for me is that if you study these extremes, the extremes inform the mean, but not the other way around. So if you study averages, you can't learn anything about the extreme cases. But, and I've talked about before the movie Objectified about design, and I think it's Smart Design that talks about how they don't care about the average user. They care about, say, and I'm making up these examples, but the quadriplegic and the 300-pound bodybuilder who can't brush his teeth because his biceps are too large. If you solve for those edge cases, the middle just takes care of itself. And I love exploring the extremes because the lessons are usually much clearer, much more severe, much more interesting from a storytelling standpoint, and you get the results a lot faster.
I am fascinated with these people as well. And it's really interesting, I think, as a society, how we perceive them, right? And you really have to stop for a second and say, is the person who's doing, the space jump, committing an act to get attention and sponsorship,
right?
Or is this their life's work?
Yeah.
And they've made a really delicate decision, an intelligent, considered decision of, I want to push the human species forward. I want to see what the capabilities of the human body are, and I'm going to accept a risk that maybe the rest of us wouldn't find acceptable. And in some way, there's a poetry to that, right? There's like you're saying, there's some natural connection between the diver without the weights and the person on the side of the rock. But then when you see them celebrated, and North Face is like, we're going to make this person the face of North Face. Mm-hmm. And I just think, wow, there's going to be a bunch of kids who think I'm going to get an endorsement by climbing up El Capitan without a rope.
Yeah. No, I mean...
And then it rains.
Right.
Literally, if it rains, they die. It's over.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of risks out there. I think that I do think the focusing on the sort of the life in the years not the years in your life is an idea worth exploring, though, because so many people have a deferred life plan, right? And even people we know, not to mention any names, but who are massively successful, more money than they could ever use, and they're just, and their target keeps moving, and they're like, all right, I made $1 million, but God, I really can't do A, B, C, or D until I have 10, and they get 10, like, well,
I got the jet card, and I don't have the jet.
Whatever,
I got the jet,
right?
Somebody's got a bigger one.
There's always something else, and I think when you get to a certain point in life, I just turned 37, and it's like, I've had multiple friends, young people, friends of mine at my age or younger, die of cancer, let alone car accidents, overdoses, 9/11. I mean, you do not have a guarantee you're going to make it to whatever your fantasy of retirement is.
Right.
No guarantee. And there's probably a non-trivial number of people in this room who will not make it to age 60. Just statistically speaking. So you need to, does that mean it's like, well, fuck it, I'm going to do like buy lottery tickets and do Girls Gone Wild every day? Like, no, that's not what you do.
Right.
But it's important to keep in mind sort of the appreciation and focus on present state awareness with these longer term goals. And this is a perennial problem, which is why or a timeless problem, really. So, I'm a huge advocate of reading Stoic philosophy, among others. I just think it's very pragmatic as an operating system for making these types of decisions.
You write the 4-Hour Work Week. You turn into Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss becomes a big thing, right? There's almost like there's Tim Ferriss out here, and then there's a Tim Ferriss like here. Yeah. And we spent some time together over the summer, and you're working more than 4 hours a day. So I'm kind of like, well, that's bullshit.
On my screenplay.
Right. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm going out, and I'm going to go, and he's working. So I don't know what this 4-hour work week, that's kind of out the window for you now. You're so passionate. Your life is so in sync right now that your working is not work to you, because you seem incredibly productive.
Yeah. Oh, I try. I mean, part of the reason I don't like to have, say, journalists follow me around. They're like, we just want to follow you for a typical day. And I'm like, it is going to bore the shit out of you. Right. Like, you don't want to do that, because most of the day I'm floundering around. They're like, wow, this guy's like the pinnacle of productivity. You got to be kidding me.
What is the average day?
Well, let me answer address the first point, which is, when we were in Italy together, riding horses and holding hands at the same time, which takes some coordination.
Now, the whole audience is like, Tim and Jason were in Italy together, and
what's going on here? So,
and then Tim finally comes on the show. Tim, should we make the announcement?
Yeah, that's true. We're engaged. The 4-Hour Work Week, the title has been a huge blessing and a huge curse, as you can imagine. The objective of the 4-Hour Work Week is not to allow you to be idle, dropping LSD every day of your life, staring at a wall, being a non-productive member of society. The objective is to provide you with a toolkit and a set of principles for increasing your per hour productivity 10x. And with that, giving you a greater set of options. And for me, while we were in Italy, for instance, it was the perfect opportunity. What an amazing spot. And I just wanted to sit down and for the enjoyment of write. Not for a blog post, not for a book deadline, just to sit down and work on my first screenplay. Right. And it was just amazing. And so for me, I enjoy creating things. I enjoy building things. And whether it's, the involvement with startups or this screenplay, the objective is to have the flexibility to craft the type of lifestyle that you want for yourself and not have it be simply a side effect of what is left over after your job or your business. To really proactively think about what your non-work life is composed of as methodically as you think about scaling a business for an IPO or an acquisition. Right. And that's not, I don't think that's terribly controversial, but it is uncommon.
Yeah, I think people took the title of the book literally, not like be 10. If you called the book "Be 10 hours more efficient," be 10 times more efficient, nobody would have bought it. Right. But by saying the 4-hour work week, people are like, hey, that sounds like a pretty good work week to me, man. I'm doing 60 hours, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they get in there, oh, it's more efficient. So a screenplay. So you're attracted to doing fiction.
Yeah, because I suck at it and I have never done it. I feel like I've worn out whatever the nonfiction cortex is. That thing is just
bored with it?
Beaten to hell. I'm not bored by it. I feel like my learning within the craft of nonfiction heads flattened out a bit, at least operating on my own. If I were to work with someone, one of these world-class nonfiction writers like Michael Lewis or John McPhee or one of these, I'm sure it would improve. But I feel like the fiction world is just the realm of imagination, and it's something I want to exercise because I feel like people who exclusively write or read nonfiction are really focused on, generally speaking, achievement to the exclusion of appreciation. And if you can't...
Science over art?
Science over art, results over enjoyment. And if you're going to constantly focus on what's next, leveling up, scaling, blah, 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 if you do that 100% of the time, you're never going to be made happy by anything that you get. So what is the point? And for that reason, I find reading fiction before bed very helpful for any type of insomnia. So it turns off your problem-solving machine. And writing fiction, precisely because it could be viewed by so many people as a waste of time, is an exercise like meditation. And I remember, you meditate, I meditate. I remember being told by Russell Simmons at one point. He said, if you don't have enough time to meditate for 30 minutes a day, which I don't do, but if you don't have time to meditate for 30 minutes a day, you need 3 hours a day. And it's like, the less you feel you can afford it, the more you need to do it. And that's how I felt about fiction writing.
And when you approach something like fiction writing, because you haven't written about this yet, I assume, how does someone like yourself approach that? Do you buy every book on fiction writing? Do you read every script? Do you find every screenplay writer and say, can I take you to lunch? How do you approach being a fiction writer?
Fiction specifically, as it relates to screenplays, I approached by reading books on screenwriting, but getting recommendations first by people who are professional screenwriters. And there were a couple of books that sort of rise to the top. For me, Save the Cat was the best and continues to be the best. There are a number of them out there. I think studying Joseph Campbell is very helpful. I mean, Star
Power
Wars,
of Myth.
Absolutely. I mean, Star Wars has a lot of its story arc and timelessness.
Kurosawa,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I did take the story seminar with Robert McKee, which is parodied in Adaptation, if anyone has ever seen that, which was quite a trip. And aside from that, I read a lot of screenplays. And
what was your favorite?
Princess Bride.
Really?
It is an amazing screenplay.
Why?
It's just so elegant and so hilarious. I think it's William Goldman. He also did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I mean, the guy is amazing, and the writing is just so beautifully elegant. There aren't a lot of extra words, so each word has its intended impact. And I think most writing, most teaching, most pitching, if we're talking about startups, for instance, fails from too much information, not too little.
The economy is just not there for
right.
So good segue into startups. What was the first startup you invested in, and when did you decide that angel investing would become more than just sort of like, I don't know, Kevin Rose dragged you into something and was like, hey, this is the best interest or something. Like, how did you wind up doing the first deal?
Kevin's pretty good. I'll invest in almost anything that he's putting money into.
Are you an investor in North?
I am.
Me too.
Yeah, well, there we go. 5.
Huh?
So I would say that in 2007, I was meeting up with Mike Maples Jr., who's now one of the general partners at Floodgate, and we were discussing company launches and marketing because the 4-Hour Workweek had just hit the bestseller list and was on a real tear. I mean, it stayed on for 4.5 years straight or something like that. So we were talking about different marketing approaches for startups, and in exchange, I would ask Mike about why he chose specific companies and deal structure and so on. And we would meet up at Hobie's on the peninsula, and it was great. It was really fun. I'm still friends with Mike. He's an amazing investor and really great guy. I actually recently sorted all my startups because I wanted to figure out what my report card was. And just as a side note, the reason I started investing in startups, or one of the reasons, was I always fantasized about going to Stanford Business School. I had this like unrequited love affair with Stanford. I'm like, oh God, all these smart people. And Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel. God, I want to go to
You have
Stanford.
weird fantasies, dude.
I think I'm just using
the wingsuit I'm behind.
I'm
but
using
Stanford
just my,
and Reid Hoffman. I'm a little bit.
I'm using my creepy voice also, which doesn't help.
Oh
but
my God, Reid.
Reid's. I do kind of have a crush
closet.
on a lot of, not the closet part, but he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
The point being, I had this fantasy to go to Stanford Business School, but ultimately couldn't justify it. And I came to that conclusion 2 or 3 times after going through part of the application process. And so what I decided to do.
What was the reason? What did you come to that you said this is a waste of time?
Every time, here's what happened. So I took a couple of classes. I took one in particular, which was I sat in on a class by Pete Wendell, who was a general partner and may still be at Sierra Ventures. And I think it was called something like Introduction to Venture Capital or Inside Venture Capital. And he really like pulled back the curtains and went deep on the details. And I was like, oh my God, like this is what I want. This is a guy who's in the trenches doing it, discussing exactly what's behind the curtain. This is amazing. But then I would go through the application process, take a tour, and I would sit in on a class where there's some guy with 15 PhDs talking about supply and demand, and it takes 47 PowerPoint slides, and it bores me to tears. And the students are like, oh yeah, this is my favorite. And I'm like, really? If this is your favorite, God, it just makes me shudder to think what are not your favorite.
Yeah.
So I would back out, and I decided to take the $120,000 at the time that it would cost to go to Stanford Business School, invest it in startups over 2 years as the Tim Ferriss fund, informally in my head, assume I would lose all of it,
but see what you learn.
But that the lessons learned would be worth it. And that's what started the whole thing. It was just an experiment.
How did that turn out?
Turned out really well. I mean, the first investment that came up when I sorted by time was Reputation.com. Used to be Reputation Defender, and that's going to be. I mean, I invested in the Series A, and now it's pre-IPO, so that one's huge.
100x, 200x, 500x.
No, I mean, if I had to guess, this is just back of the envelope kind of stuff, but it might end up somewhere between 50 and 100x. Which is pretty good.
Which is extraordinary compared to the stock market or any other wealth creation.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I've had companies fail, of course, as we all have, but I think the list is pretty good. I've been very fortunate, and, I'm still not
What's
convinced.
the biggest hit?
Uber.
Okay.
I was pre-seed advisor with Uber, so that's a big one. But
we're just gonna high five up here.
yeah. So the Uber Evernote has done extremely well.
Great product.
Oh, it's amazing.
Feels amazing.
Shopify has done extremely well.
Amazing. Canadian company.
Yeah, they're killing it. They have a competition right now. You can join me and Richard Branson on Necker Island for a week if you'd like. Check it out, shopify.com/Tim. Gotta
Plugs
do it.
Are welcome.
Gotta do it. And
when you invest in something, are they like, hey, I'll let you invest in the A round, but our expectation is that we get like a Tim Ferriss like cutout head we can put next to the logo and 7 tweets, and we want you to tell everybody that like our CEO is the coolest guy ever. Like, how does that work?
I don't invest in companies if they say that. If a company comes to me and they're like, hey, we'll give you some advisory shares to put you in the deck so we can go raise money and we'll give you 0.1%. I'm just like, no, if you can't raise money without my face on the deck, then you have a problem with your business.
Right.
If people don't want to talk to me first about the product, I'm out. It has to be product first. But
what about the marketing piece? Because it is very seductive for a founder to have Tim Ferriss on their side, or Ashton Kutcher, or Kevin Rose, and be able to say like, wow, these people have significant followings.
Yeah.
When you talk about Shopify or another startup, it's pretty much guaranteed that hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of people are probably going to sample that product.
Yeah, which is why I take the responsibility so seriously, because I value, this is going to sound bad, but I value my audience more than I value my startups. Even though financially, I should be more incentivized to help the startups, because it takes years to build a loyal fan base. Right. And they're loyal precisely because they trust you, and you can lose that in the blink of an eye. Have you made a mistake ever where you're like, hey, I really like this product, and then like it's a Kickstarter and it falls apart and doesn't deliver, and then people are like, Tim, you backed this. I don't think that I have, because I take it so seriously. And if I recommend people check out something on Kickstarter, or let's say startup investment, right, on AngelList, it's like I'm very upfront. I say like, this is casino money. It's the highest risk, potentially highest reward class you can imagine. If you cannot comfortably lose what you're thinking of investing, choose a different asset class.
What do you think the asset mix should be? So if you're like an individual and you have $1 million or $500,000 or $100,000, what percentage of net worth would you be comfortable at in each of those scenarios? You have 100,000, 500,000, $1 million. What would Tim Ferriss, with that amount of money, think is the right amount to angel invest?
Oh God, I'm not. This is one of those do as I say, not as I do situations.
Okay, so
I'm not a financial investor or advisor.
huge disclaimer. This is what Tim Ferriss would do.
Disclaimer. Don't put me in jail. But I think the people I know who have the most money, who do a lot of angel investing, usually limit it to about 10% of their net worth or liquid assets.
Bankroll, okay.
I am way out of whack. I have a very
50%,
highly correlated, but that's partially due to the fact that these startups have appreciated so much. Mm-hmm. Right. Now you can't really rebalance. I mean, it's hard to rebalance your paper portfolio, right? You can't.
No, there is no rebalancing of a paper portfolio.
So I would say I think 10% is pretty aggressive, and I think it's
5% as an individual, civilian. You would say, like, if you're, like some family member at Thanksgiving says, like, oh, Tim, I have extra money. You'd say 5%, 3%.
5% or zero. I think that.
So somewhere between 0 and 5.
You should not invest in startups unless you have some type of unique access or unique access by proxy, like AngelList, if you're following a certain syndicate.
Talk about that.
Yeah, but I would just say, like, I live in Silicon Valley. I live and breathe startup founders 24/7. I'm talking to these people, meeting with these people, eating with these people.
And they read your books. It's a huge advantage.
That's a huge advantage. No, it's a huge advantage.
You come into the room, they know who Tim Ferriss is. They probably read the book, and their CTO is definitely got all the books and can't shut up about it.
So I have a huge informational advantage that is, and you do too, that is hard for other people to replicate. And you should not, if you're investing, especially in the stock market, you have to realize you're dealing with a greater fool scenario. What does that mean? It's kind of like if you don't know who the sucker is at the poker table, you're the sucker. And the startups are slightly different, but like if you're playing in the stock market, it's very often a zero-sum game. It's like you wouldn't play a golf match against Tiger Woods for money. No.
But you're going to play the Goldman Sachs guys.
Yeah, or like Ray Dalio and the hedge fund wizards.
How's that work?
And the high-frequency traders, you're going to get killed. You have to have
Mark Cuban's position, right?
Like you have to have some advantage. So I'm very conservative. I mean, to give you an idea, I own no public stocks right now. I have I'm not saying you should do this. This is my psychology. I have all of my money, this is so funny, in cash or cash-like equivalents, and then startups. It's what Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan, would call a barbell strategy. So I have my stuff in extremely conservative
bonds and cash.
Yeah, exactly. Or highly speculative, where I have an informational advantage. And
you sleep well at night with that?
What's that?
You sleep well at night with that?
I sleep really well with it. And to be honest, what's kind of funny is the ability to sell stock on the secondary market has made it harder to sleep at night. The reason being, with startups, I'm used to doing all of my homework, making a decision, and then I'm done. I'm in. And if it's going to be a huge success, it'll probably take 7 to 10 years. And if it fails, it fails. But I don't have to make any more decisions about it.
And now you're getting emails saying, hey, the people doing this round would like to take out your position.
Right. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want to buy? Do I want to sell? Do I want to buy more? And the reason I don't invest in stocks isn't because they're a bad investment necessarily. The one stock that a while back I invested quite a bit in was Amazon. Did very well. I was also early in Alibaba, which has turned out pretty well so far, but I'm in lockup. Is every day I'm too much of a crackhead, obsessive compulsive, not to take a look at the stock. And it makes me
cognitive overhead.
I become Mr. Market, to use Warren Buffett parlance, who's just like this manic depressive person who walks in, is like, should I buy? Should I sell? Should I buy? Should I sell? I don't like to have that cognitive overhead. So startups is a good fit for me. But I think generally speaking, 5% or less of your net worth or liquid assets for startups.
Okay, we're going to go to question and answer in a minute. I'm going to ask that everybody form a very tight question. And if anybody starts doing a promotion and or therapy, everybody in the audience should boo. Those are the ground rules here. So no promotions for your company. We'll get the microphone ready. But let me ask you about the AngelList Syndicate, because this thing came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty amazing. You went from Tim Ferriss, the guy with the books who's investing in some things. Like, nobody's got to deal with you in the venture capital or AngelListing space. You're like not significant in terms of competition. Mm-hmm. And then we wake up one day and Naval turns on syndicates, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, You come prancing in and boom, you got millions of dollars.
I love prancing.
Just boom, gallops right up to the front of the class. And everybody's like, hey, wait a second. We thought Gil would be up there. He's kind of, and okay, Brad fell. But then it's like, whoa, this is wild card. Tim Ferriss. He's like one of the top ones. How big is the syndicate and how many have you done?
Yeah, the dark horse. I like that.
Very much. Katy Perry style.
Yeah, the syndicate is at about somewhere between $4.1 and $4.5 million in backing per deal. All right. So if you amplify that out to a fund, you're looking at a pretty good sized fund right there.
If you did 20 deals, it's $80 million.
Right.
But there's a caveat. You can only have 99 people per deal.
Correct.
So how many individual backers are there?
There are a lot, but I have about 700 total backers. But I've filled every single one of my deals with the 99, obviously, because you have to. I've done somewhere between 5 and 8 deals. Mm-hmm. And
what's the average size? What's the high? What's the low in terms of how much money actually came in from the $4 million?
Well, it's partially a function of what I'm going for, right?
Right. You have an allocation.
Right. And what I have access to is going up. So the smallest has been, I believe the smallest has been 250K. The highest has been more than $1 million. And I expect fully in the next few months that I will close the largest syndicate round that AngelList has ever seen. The reason, and all of my allocations are filled within typically 30 to 60 minutes.
Right.
And then it takes time to get the wires and whatnot. Putting aside for the moment all the benefits to founders of the syndicates, which I think are immense, what's starting to happen is the larger syndicates are now posing a legitimate competitive threat to large venture capital firms, and not just C&D tier firms. We're talking about name brand A-list firms, and it's in their best interest, instead of just disregarding and scoffing at the syndicates, which was the case for a long time, to play nice, because the syndicates at the very least can drive up the price of rounds for them.
That would be at the very least.
At the very least. And in some cases, so I've had venture capital firms who have said, Tim Ferriss, screw Tim Ferriss, like we want the whole thing. It's us or Tim, and the founders have chosen me.
Wow.
So that's going to become, I think, increasingly common with a lot of the top performing syndicates.
And why would a founder pick you? What did they say was the reason? We won't talk about which company was or which venture capital firm, but what did the founder say was their thinking of why solo act Tim Ferriss is not as good as the firm on Sand Hill Road with probably 100 people or 50 people in the building?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. The first is that I choose the type of company that I get involved with is fairly narrow. I mean, typically it's a consumer-facing product that I can become a power user of, that has traction that I can pour gasoline on.
Right.
And I have a proven track record of doing that with dozens of companies now. So if somebody's trying to get to their first 100,000 active users across the country, including a lot of influencers, not only do I have that in my audience, but in the syndicate, I have some of the most famous founders and Hollywood celebrities and fill in the blank. They're in my syndicate already. Yeah. So it's not hard for me to compete if the risk is. Stephen Blank has said this before, but like companies rarely die due to lack of technology. They die because of lack of customers.
Right.
And I'm really good at getting customers.
Right.
And they're attention, right? And so I think that's part one. Part two is, quite frankly, it's a difference between syndicates versus VC, not even Tim Ferriss versus general partner. Because as you know, I mean, the syndicates have a speed advantage. They have a simplicity advantage.
What is the speed advantage? Explain that to the entrepreneurs in the room.
Right, and this isn't the only advantage, but it's one to consider. I have seen companies die because of protracted funding rounds, where you have a small company that should be focusing on building product, and they have to take a month, 2 months out of their schedule to focus almost exclusively, or at least a lot of their bandwidth.
It might be 2 or 3 months, yeah.
Right, is dedicated to doing a dog and pony show for people in venture capital firms who don't give them a hard no or yes. They're like, oh, very interesting. Like, well, let us know when so-and-so if says yes or so-and-so leads.
If somebody else is competition or you figure this business model out and there's no risk, we'll gladly write a check.
Right. It's like it's like the banks, right? They want to lend you money precisely when you lead.
How much money do you have in your account? We will give you a loan for 10% of that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
As long as you keep that in our bank account.
So I think the speed is like, look, you don't need to.
How quick do you make a decision?
Do I make a decision?
Yeah.
It depends a lot on the company. I'll tell you what I don't do. If someone gives me an exploding offer, and most of which are completely artificial, and they're like, we're totally oversubscribed, but like if you want to do something, we can know, but we need to get, have signed docs now. DocuSign is in your inbox and I'm like, well, it's a Friday. Don't pull that bullshit on me because you know that my lawyers can't review it. No, I'm not doing the deal.
Right.
Sorry. Like if this is how you're going to behave when we're dating, like,
yes.
No.
You're acting crazy.
You're going to be much worse when we're married. So
you're starting a fight. Picking you up.
Have a good life. Yeah. And the other thing is, you don't need to say yes to every good deal that comes along. You can wait for the good deal that also combines good people. And
so a certain amount of patience. But if I have a product and you use it and you're like, I love this product. And then you meet with me and you're like, yeah, you're a smart guy. I checked you out. A couple of my friends said you're legit. How quickly do you make a decision? What's the quickest you've made a decision?
I mean, I can make decisions on the spot. If I've done enough due diligence, and enough due diligence could include, all right, they've got clean cap table, no bridge financing. They're not in a like Series B crunch where it's going to be a weird down round and they're just taking whatever they can get. They're a serial founder who knows me, they know my stuff, so they have done their homework. It's a product that I've used already and I understand intimately, so I sort of inherently get the market dynamics and where it could go. I've even thought about it perhaps just using the product, and they've shown me the numbers, and instead of being like, we have 30% month-on-month growth, I'm like, how many months though? Because like, you can fake that. I know the tricks.
Yeah. We spent a lot of money on Facebook ads and things are up and to the right.
Yeah, exactly.
And we need your money to keep it going.
Right. So if it's all of that, plus they've been referred to me by, say, a killer founder who's from one of my companies, who's
all put their name on the line.
Yeah, who's putting their name and even their cash, or they're joining the board. It's like, okay, this has all the indications of being a winner. Like, yes, I will agree to at least invest something as long as the terms make sense. The fine print. Let's talk about, like, I'm interested, let's talk. And if that's not enough, if they're like, hey, I need a decision right now, they're out. But the people who are really good don't do that.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah. It's a big red flag when people are acting insane like that. Like, oh my God, the term sheet, we have to get it going. Oh my God, there's only $172,000 left, and I want you, and I got $50 million that wants to come in for that.
Yeah. No, the people who are really, really good want the right investors. They're not in a rush.
They're not
like
spastic.
That. No, they're like, I'm going to be doing this for like 10 years. I'm fine with picking the right people. And it reminds me of a quote. I think it's Margaret Thatcher. It might have been Madeleine Albright. I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said, and I'm paraphrasing, but being a lady. No, being powerful is like being a lady. If you say you are, you probably aren't. And I think that when people are like, oh, this is about, and they're just like, they're overselling and really putting on the hard pitch with an immediate request for action. Those
huge negative.
They're never the companies I want to invest in.
All right, let's do some questions from the audience. Andrew, you have a microphone. We're going to run that microphone to somebody. Does somebody have the microphone? Okay, here we go. And remember our general rules for This Week in Startups. You're going to stand up, tell us your name, and ask a concise question.
My name is Alex. And this is really not startup related. You were just talking about, wingsuit flying. I was like, I actually licensed skydiver or not?
Am I a licensed skydiver? Yeah. I've done tandem. I'm not a licensed skydiver.
No, you should jump solo. You'll get. There is a key to actually doing it that you haven't captured yet.
Yeah, I would like to.
There's some advice from the audience. All right, let's get another concise question. Andrew, go ahead. Take your time, Andrew. It's cool.
Hey, favorite show. I had Chris Saka.
Just go right into the microphone. Yeah,
Sorry.
When you hold the microphone, hold it like this. Good.
I'm Kurt Kumar. Favorite podcast for Chris Saka and Austin Hines from Cambrian.
Cambrian was a great episode. Chris Saka, great episode.
Really like that. Question for you, Tim, is what are the 3 steps you would say that the founder can approach you or do a kind of like a warm-up dance rather than come right to you and say like, hey, I'm pitching this, and you're like,
All right, what's a way to approach you that's not bizarre and weird? Like a tango or what, salsa?
The worst way is coming up to me when I'm peeing at a urinal and just launching into your pitch, or coming up to me when I'm having dinner with my girlfriend and just sitting down at the table and starting to pitch. I've had both of those things happen repeatedly. What the fuck is wrong with you people, Silicon Valley?
But inside was a good idea, and you told me to follow up.
It's like your intention's in the right place, but this is crazy fatal attraction behavior.
I got up
So I would say the pretty much the only way that I'm paying attention to deals now is if it comes from either a certain critical mass of my followers, and by the way, telling a bunch of people to spam me on Twitter immediately gets you disqualified. So that's not what I mean. But if I ask my followers, hey, what's the best e-commerce platform out there? What are you guys using and happy with for building stores? And they say Shopify, which is exactly how I met them.
Right.
I saw that when I was revising the 4-Hour Workweek, and I was like, holy shit, like this is a high percentage response. So I went and met them. That or a introduction through someone that I already trust, someone I've co-invested with, someone who's a very trusted CEO in one of my companies. And by the way, the first question I'm going to ask them is, are you investing? Or are you going to spend time on this? And if they say no, then I say no thanks. Don't send me stuff that you're not involved with unless if you believe in it so much, aren't you involved?
Yeah. How many times do people meet with you? And I don't know who gave this piece of advice to founders, but this is a terrible piece of advice. If you meet with somebody and they decide not to invest, ask them for 3 more introductions. I'm like, if I email my 3 friends and say, hey, here's a startup that I'm not investing in. They are the first thing they're going to say to me is, well, why are you sending it to me?
Right, exactly.
It's basically saying, here's a dog, this thing is never going to work. Please spend some time with them. Yeah,
good luck. So it would be that. And I think there are multiple ways to tackle that problem, but it might sound funny, but like part of my litmus test for startups is like, how intelligently do you approach me? And if you can't figure that out, like how the fuck are you going to figure out the much harder stuff later?
How to get to Tim Ferriss.
Without like...
Who is he tweeting
being a crazy
on a
psycho.
regular basis?
Yeah, exactly.
Who is he invested with on Crunchbase or AngelList or Mattermark? And just start having conversations with those people. What's Tim like? And
the other thing is just knowing my stuff. Like you have to be familiar with me. If someone isn't going to put in the time to do the homework to see if it's a natural fit, then I'm not going to put in the time to correct them of that mistake.
So quality over quantity. You don't need to spam every investor that you find on AngelList. Mm-hmm. Find the 5 best, do a ton of research, and really come at them in a strategic, authentic fashion.
Definitely, and don't be in a rush. I mean, you really want the right people who have a history of helping startups. And let me qualify what I mean by that. What's important is not who you have invest in your company. What's important is who you have invest who will actually help you, or at the very least, not cause trouble. So the worst thing, some people are like, oh, the worst thing that could have happen is if I have like 5 investors and they never help me. No, that's not the worst thing.
Oh, no.
The worst thing you could have happen is you have 5 investors and they all beat the table and pound and scream and yell and sabotage you because they think they know what's right. That's the worst.
What's the worst behavior you've seen? Because you're invested in enough companies now, dozens and dozens of companies. What is, the SMH moment for you?
From investors?
From an investor, where you're just like shaking your head like, holy shit.
There are a lot of, if somebody hasn't played with their own money at some point, my general recommendation is don't take them as an investor. They don't know what the fuck they're getting into. And if they haven't like had to deal with meeting payroll or figuring out marketing by themselves, or like setting up a shitty trade show booth when they were just starting out to try to make stuff happen, or carrying copies of a magazine around in a backpack like Jason did. Like if they haven't had to do that, they don't know what you're up against. They have no idea. And if they were just an SVP at Yahoo 15 years ago, or were fill in the blank big company and happened to luck in on some windfall, I've seen those types behave very poorly, or just like MBA types. And then, look, there's some very smart people who come out of MBA programs, but if that's all they've done, I've seen a lot of those folks like pound the table and yell at founders and curse and scream as soon as something turns south. And there are a lot of fair weather investors out there.
For sure.
And if you want to learn who you should have invest in your company or not, talk to some of their companies that did not succeed and find out how they responded.
That is a great pro tip. Let's take another question from the audience.
Hey, I'm Eric. So my question to you is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on?
Wow, this is like a Charlie. This is like who's that Inside the Actors studio guy?
Oh,
yeah, that's like some Lipton level shit right there. Eric.
The Will Ferrell.
Oh, would you like to take the seat?
The Will Ferrell parody of Lipton is hilarious, but that's a Peter Thiel question. Yeah.
What's a truth?
Yeah. That very few people agree with you on.
Very few people agree with you on. Timothy?
Oh, God, you sound like my mother when she's angry.
Timothy?
Let's see here.
About the stem cell injections? Is it necessary?
I'd rather give you a good answer than a rushed answer. Just give me a second while I sit here.
All right, we'll run the microphone to the next question.
Silence.
Here we go. Run that over here.
I'll come back to that.
He's going to bookmark it, put a pin in it. We're going to put a pin in that one. I will make sure he gives you an answer.
Hi, I'm Hugh. What is a Rome-based Tim Ferriss screenplay about?
Rome-based?
You said you wrote it in Rome?
Oh, no,
Italy.
you wrote it in Italy.
I did. It wasn't like under the Tuscan sun or whatever.
But technically, we were kind of under the Tuscan sun.
We were. It would be
Just two men by the pool writing.
Would be an adaptation of a lot of the backstory behind the 4-Hour Workweek, and it would be sort of like a Fight Club meets dodgeball.
A true underdog.
With some like deep, hopefully, philosophical takeaways from the book that would leave people as they walk out of the theater being like, fuck, like, all right, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit that job I've been meaning to quit for 10 years. I'm going to do this that I've been meaning to do for 10 years. That would be the basic idea. So
you want it to be funny.
Definitely. Yeah.
But you want to rock people to their core.
Yeah. So Fight Club is, a really good analogy for that, I think.
Is that one of your favorite films?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic
Is it the
film.
favorite, or?
It's not the favorite. It's one of the favorites.
Do you think that played a role in you becoming the Tim Ferriss?
No.
No. Okay. I'm just asking. What's your other?
I think fighting has for sure, but not Fight Club.
You like to fight?
Compete in like judo and stuff like that. Yeah, I used to. I think.
What is it about that people like? What is it about that experience of just being in that moment when all hell's breaking loose that is appealing?
I think there are a few things, and I haven't forgotten your question. I'll come back to it. The first is there's a selection bias. Once again, this is very common. I sucked at a lot of sports. I happen to be good at wrestling. So that sent me on that path. Secondly, I think that for the same reason that I'm fascinated by EMTs and emergency room physicians is the same reason I'm fascinated by fighters, because they're people who choose to run towards the chaos, not away from it.
Wow.
And that's interesting. Firefighters, same thing. So it takes a particular mentality and just a set of rules and beliefs to do that. And what I also like about pretty much anything full contact is that your job, this is true for stand-up comedy also. Your job title doesn't matter. Your level of success doesn't matter in the professional sense. It's like all you have is what you bring to the mat. That's it. Nobody gives a shit, even what your name is. It's
like Tim Ferriss, you just got your ass kicked.
Right, which I have to be careful about because people are like, oh, cool, it's Tim Ferriss. Let me try to go knee bar his leg off. But I like the purity of that. They're like the artifice that is so ubiquitous in adulthood, just like all the layers of bullshit is gone. Like none of that exists. It's just a very pure experience. Yeah. And I think that's rare, and it's something you can easily engineer to have in your life by practicing one of these things.
Did you ever work on an ambulance? Did you ever ride on an ambulance?
Say again?
Ever work on an ambulance? Did you ever ride on an ambulance?
No, I'm going to be doing hopefully some ER shifts actually down in Palo Alto in the next few months.
Are you an EMT yet or no?
No, I'm not. I have done some emergency response training here with NERT, which is run by the police and fire department here in San Francisco. So I have some very, very basic sort of triage ability, but not to the level I would like.
Fascinating that you're interested in that. I was an EMT.
Oh, really?
In Brooklyn, yeah. I was 19 or 20. Cool. It's a pretty intense group of people. You're exactly right. Like they are cut from a certain cloth where, the car's flipped over and they all run towards it, and the person's stabbed and the blood's pouring out, or the person's, needs CPR and they do it. And it's very intense.
Yeah.
I think probably the most intense moments in my life came as an EMT.
Yeah, and I think that as Dean Karnassus would say, a very famous ultramarathoner who's right here in the Bay Area, and I'm paraphrasing again, but people confuse comfort with success, and I feel like actively seeking out discomfort is a very rapid way to develop skill sets that withstand unpredictable circumstances. Although, one of the Eric, beliefs that I have that I'm sure some people share, but is that adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. So I think that you have to train, but you really see the true colors come out when someone is exposed to extreme adversity or they have a lot of money. Money is the same thing. It just magnifies who you are. Doesn't change you.
How stoked would you be if there was a zombie apocalypse? Because it feels like you're training your whole life.
Has anyone here seen, I think it's Hannah, the movie?
Is this a zombie film? I haven't seen it.
No, it's about Eric Bana training his daughter to be like an ultra assassin.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. The beginning's amazing. Yeah. So zombie apocalypse, I'm not that stoked about a zombie apocalypse. It would infringe on my lifestyle quite a bit. Unless it were like a Shaun of the Dead zombie apocalypse where they were put on game shows after the fact and so on, had them working in shopping malls, pushing stuff around, then maybe that would be okay. But yeah, no, I'd be ready. I mean,
I'm telling you, man, I'm going to Tim Ferriss.
I've got my bows, I've got my guns, I've got my training, I've got my water and all that crazy prepper stuff.
All right, we got a question in the back. Andrew, pick somebody in the back because we're going to be fair. In the back. Who in the back's got a question? Nobody? All right, then come up here. Let's get Linda's question here. Right here. Andrew, take it right here. Because we have to, Andrew, let me tell you how we do this. You got to spread it out a little bit.
Hi,
this way.
Lydia Sugarman.
Yeah.
So who'd win, you or Bear Grylls?
In what kind of match?
Chess.
Well,
the most obvious. No, I'm sorry. Checkers.
7-day wilderness challenge.
Oh, Bear Grylls, 100%. That guy, is
judo.
Oh, I don't know how much experience he has. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I used to be pretty
What about
good.
just in a bar fight?
Maybe I'm more of like a cheap haymaker thrower. I don't know. Maybe I would
you're
win.
The scrappy guy.
I think I could do
it,
but he's better with improvised weapons. I think he'd like pull out an ashtray and like smash it on the counter and throw it at my head like a ninja star and take me out. I think Bear has some very legitimate training. I think in a 7-day survival scenario, he would definitely beat me.
How do you not have a reality show? It makes no sense to me. Who is running television?
I have 13 episodes of a reality show that is sitting on a shelf at Turner Broadcasting.
Can't do anything competitive, or are you just busy?
No, I can do something, but I spent a year on that show, and I want this stuff to be released into the wild for people to see before I do any more of it. So
why don't they just release it for the web and you just get done with it? At least people can see it.
Well, that's a great question. So I'm waiting for them. I have tried repeatedly to negotiate.
Who is this, Turner?
Turner, yeah. And I've tried repeatedly to negotiate with them to pay them to get it off the shelf, and it's just fallen on deaf ears. So I might try to rally some popular support for that.
Started. Everybody, a message to This Week in Startups and Tim Ferriss crossover fans. There are some.
Yeah,
there are
for sure.
Number. How many? That's a good question. How many people here listen to both podcasts? Who listens to both? Wow, Sweet. There is a crossover, about 20%. Nice. Perfect. All right, so all of you maniacs, go ahead and give the CEO and the executives at Turner a hard time. Now you know what that's going to result.
Well, I want to. If I'm going to do it, now I want to try to work things out with them. It's not far off. I'm thinking about doing something on change.org. Eventually, if I can't get it done any other way, I've been trying for a year to get this thing unleashed.
Enough patience.
It's a long time. Yeah. So we'll see. Right. TBD. But yeah, the show is, oh God, it's so good.
I can't believe it. You would be so good on reality. The fact that you're not, there's so many dummies with crocodiles and trailer parks and Honey Boo Boo. This stuff is so inane and you're so fucking interesting.
Me versus Honey Boo Boo in a bar fight?
Yeah, Honey Boo Boo.
I take her out.
Yeah, Honey Boo. Okay,
She's
let's go.
Head kicking height.
Two more questions and then everybody drinks. Thanks to our good friends at Pivotal Labs for all the booze. All right, let's get another question.
Hey, my name is Steve. I'm curious, have you tried the isolation tank yet?
ISO tank.
Yeah, isolation tank. I have. I'm a big fan of flotation and isolation tanks. Well, so I should rephrase that. Actually, I've done flotation tanks repeatedly. I haven't done full on isolation where you would have. I guess I have eye covers and complete darkness with earplugs, so it's pretty close.
What's it like?
It is. What is it like?
What would be the thing we would most like? Is it like being passed out after drinking too much? Is it like being really calm? Is it being stoned?
It's like
what is it like?
floating in the air horizontally. I mean, if anyone's ever laid in the Dead Sea, it's very much like that because you're laying in a pool of very highly saline water. I mean, there's a ton of salt in there, so you float about half your body on the surface of the water. So you want to make sure that you don't shave before you do that, or you're going to have a very rough time. I think that it is possibly, and Joe Rogan talks about this a lot. That's how I was introduced to it. But I think you can get several hours of meditation benefit from being in there for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
I really feel like
Huge endorsement.
Yeah, I think that it has tremendous implications. The problem is they tend to be difficult to find. And some people like Joe Rogan have them built into his house, but it's a fair production.
Got it built into his house.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Oh yeah. Well,
Who's the most interesting person you met now? Because you get to meet all these great celebrities. Like, who's the celebrity you met and you were just like, wow, this person is cool. It's like the real deal. Like, I can hang with this person a lot.
Well, I recently, I just say in the last year, the guy I met that really was just so genuine and what you would exactly hope him to be was
You
huge.
can't pick me. The next one on the list.
So besides you, Jason, number
Yes.
2, no, Hugh Jackman. So
Really?
yeah, I had the chance to go work out with Hugh Jackman, which by the way,
He's a beast.
he is legitimate. That guy is a monster. And oh my God, I've done some hard training in my life. That guy is as legit as they possibly come. Like,
How do you-
that man is Wolverine. Like
I saw the pictures of him holding the bar. and
He is
he's
a
like,
beast.
He's like, if the bar doesn't bend, you're not doing it right. He's
Yeah,
like lifting
he's
a bar
a
so
beast, and just like
hard.
the nicest guy you've ever met. He's such a sweetheart of a guy.
He's really into show tunes. I saw him in The Boy
Yeah.
from Oz. He was
He's
incredible.
amazing. He's an amazing guy.
Wow.
So-
Okay, hold on a second. Because we sort of skipped right into this now. How does like Hugh Jackman just call and he's like, "Hey Tim, I'm a huge fan," or do you call him, or it's like some agent broker this, or Ashton Kutcher's like, "Hey, you want to meet Wolverine? He's at my house." How does it work? Because I don't know any of it.
I was a friend of a friend of a friend, and I got a text on like a Saturday morning. They're like, "Hey, you want to work out with Hugh Jackman?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Where, in New York or here?
New York.
So you're in New York, and somebody's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go work out with him."
Yeah,
You wanna go?
Yeah, my friend works out with Hugh Jackman. Do you want to like roll over to blah 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 and work out with them? And I was like, yes, but how embarrassed am I going to like how much am I going to embarrass myself?
Right.
Because just like by looking at the guy, you can get a pretty good idea of if someone's an athlete or just a cosmetic lifter very quickly. Like you look at the size of traps and legs is usually a good place to look. And I was like, that guy works out like in a legitimate other than bench press way. Like he does real athletic training. I was like, God, like I could end up really humiliating myself in front of a group of people. But
And what is this, like a private gym you guys are at?
No, he actually was just at like a public gym with a couple of
What,
guys.
do people just line up and like, "Hey, can I take a picture with Wolverine?"
No, people were very.
That's New York.
People didn't bother him at all, other
New
than me.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, "Hey, you, can I take a picture?" All right, let's go. One more question. Here we go. We're going to go on. This is hour 2 here.
Hi, my name is
We're
Baptiste.
90 minutes in.
I had a question for you. One of your books, you were talking. Wait here.
Okay.
You were talking about polyphasic, which
Yep.
allows you to like sleep between 3 and 5 hours a night. Do you still practice it?
So the question is about polyphasic sleep, breaking up single blocks of sleep into multiple segments. Polyphasic sleep for me is an emergency measure. I don't follow polyphasic sleep voluntarily. So there are people who will break up. Matt Mullenweg, that was the example I used when he was developing a lot of the code base for WordPress, did this. It's very antisocial to have to take naps every 2.5 hours. and it pretty much makes having a girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife out of the question. So I don't use polyphasic sleep unless I have to. And there are cases where you have to. But my general view is that if you feel like you have to sleep less because you don't have enough time in the day, you need to clarify your priorities, not figure out how to sleep less, is my general position.
That seems like a very intense thing. I'm only going to sleep in 20-minute increments. Does it actually work?
It can work. Certainly doesn't work for everyone, but it's very difficult. So if you're breaking up your sleep cycle into what they would call, say, Uberman, which is these 20-minute or so naps every 2.5 hours. If you miss one nap, you're roadkill for a day or two. You're done. So there's a very low margin for error. So those of you who've read, in particular, The 4-Hour Chef, probably realize I'm a big fan of having a large margin of safety in most things that I do. Even though from the outset, looking from the outside in, it might not seem that way. I really think about mitigating my downside a lot.
All right, final question. Let's do one final question. This guy's had his hand up since the beginning. You got to let this guy. I'm sorry, I feel so bad. God.
Hi, big fan. Name's Anthony.
Hey, Anthony.
No, I'm sure you don't have time to.
You want to take a selfie?
No,
that's cool. Come on up. No, I insist. Come up. You're a huge fan.
Like all the questions, I'm sure you get a gazillion questions on all the the channels of communication. I'm just curious how much, if you could guess, like what percentage of questions are already answered by your books or blog posts or other content that you've put out.
Yeah, I'd say at least 70% of the questions that I get via any social channel have been answered via blog posts or the books. I mean, there are more than almost 600 blog posts on the blog now, and they're organized by topic. I'd say 70% plus are answered.
What was your name again?
Anthony.
Now, you said you're a super fan of Tim Ferriss's?
Well, I'm one of you guys, actually.
All right, well, let's talk about Tim for a second. This is Tim's night. So you're a super fan of Tim's? To what extent does his fandom go? You've read all the books? You own all the books?
Yeah, I have the books. I've read the blog. I listened to the podcast. That's about it.
Which I appreciate. By the way. I mean, there's so much content out there. I'm like, honestly, it's like so.
What is it about Tim? What is it like? I want to understand the Tim Ferriss fan for me. Are you a true super fan?
It's a forehead reflection.
Who's a true super fan?
I think.
Yeah. I don't know if I would say. I mean, I'm.
All right, give me who's the biggest super fan here? Honestly, who thinks they're the biggest? All right, the green guy. Wait, go ahead. Oh, wait, is this your significant other? On mic. Wait, now who are you? You're the wife? You're the girlfriend?
I'm the wife. Yeah.
You're the wife. Okay.
So I would say he's a super fan, but he's a very rational super fan. He's not just obsessive super fan of the persona.
Yeah.
But he really likes his ideas. He loves how curious Tim is.
Let me ask you a question.
Like when you follow Tim.
Which, by the way, is what I want. Like, I want people to be skeptical.
I really like about Tim that when you're following him, he's always taking you to new places. So I find that his curiosity very enriching. In the same way he pushes his. So what I think is very special about Tim is that, you follow some people who are very into physical experiments, supplements, workout. But he has this combination where he's very curious about different ideas and also about expanding himself physically. So
you both, in a way, you're both super fans. Let's be honest here.
I spend a lot of time. With Tim. No. Tim spent a lot of time with me because I'm always listening to
Are you a Tim Ferriss widow? Is that what you're saying? I feel like this is a Tim Ferriss widow here.
No, it's not a marriage.
Let me ask you a question. How many nights a week are we talking about Tim or Tim's blog posts? In all honesty.
Nights a week?
How many times a week do you talk about something related to Tim?
No. I don't.
3, 4? What is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right.
Well, but at least weekly, I'm exposed to some Tim stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, So.
Your fans are very intense, aren't they? What's the most intense thing a fan has done? Unless there's a restraining order.
Well, there are those actually.
What?
Oh yeah.
You had to get a restraining order? A man or a woman?
Man.
Yeah. A man.
Yeah. It wasn't like Fatal Attraction, like, Sharon Stone stuff. It was, let me just say, first of all, I feel like I'm very fortunate I feel like I learn more from my fans on a daily basis. This is part of the reason I have comments. Some bloggers don't have comments. Right. I have comments because I will often write about something to gain a better understanding of that subject, because within the first 20 comments, somebody who's either done it 10 times more than I have or who is one of the world's foremost experts is going to comment. Like if you look at my post on how I learned how to swim, one of the first comments is from the coach of the national swim team. It's just like, what? It's so amazing. So that's part of the reason I also write is to learn from other people. But there are always, you have to assume if you have an audience online or of any type, like 1 out of every 1,000 people is going to be batshit crazy. It's just statistically,
numbers,
it's like walk around San Francisco. Good God, it's like you can see plenty of crazy. 1 out of 5. So I've had people who have thought I've been encoding private messages to them directly through my Facebook status updates, who then quit their jobs and tell their coworkers that they're coming to work for me. And like I've had some stuff.
I told Robert Scoble to stop that many times. It's ridiculous.
So but here's the thing. It's like most of those things don't end badly. I mean, it's
a harmless people who are just getting a little ahead of themselves.
Yeah, and
but I could tell, Anthony, and I'm glad that your wife chimed in. I could see the way you were looking at Tim. It was very exciting for you, wasn't it? It was.
I don't want to pick on Anthony.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like you should come up and take a selfie with him. You want to take a selfie with him?
No, it's all right. It's all right.
I think you should take a selfie.
I don't want to pressure him.
Afterwards, will you take a selfie with him?
I'll hang out for a while.
He'll take a selfie.
The other thing I should point out, and this is not a unique ability that I have, it's just a question that I ask myself is, can other people replicate this when I'm writing? So it's not enough to have an interesting story. It's not enough to be a good writer. It's not enough to have detail. You have to ask, will other people be able to use this? Mm-hmm. And if it's too expensive, if it's impossible to find, if it's fill in the blank, 30 other things, the answer is no. Mm. And if the answer is no, I typically don't publish it. And I think that if other writers just took that approach, or teachers for that matter, you would have people experimenting, replicating what they've done, improving on their results, and they would have a more loyal fan base because of that. So those are some of my thoughts, but it's really about the system, not any inherent ability that I have.
Did you ever imagine in your childhood or when you were growing up that you would reach this level of notoriety and have this level of, I perceive you have a level of enjoyment and peace in your life that few people get to. And I see a lot of people, we have a lot of the same friends. A lot of people are never happy. You talked about that.
Sure.
You seem to me truly content. Do you feel truly content at this point in your life?
It comes and goes. I try to practice gratitude, and that sounds new agey and whatever, but it's, literally a practice of writing down like 3 things that I am grateful for every morning or every night. And I think that gratitude equals contentment in a lot of ways, and it's a more useful word or concept to strive for, and it's something you can practice in a very small way. And I have been proactively trying to cultivate that, whether it's through meditation once or twice a day for say 10 to 20 minutes, or deliberately doing things like fiction writing, which have no practical business purpose for most people. Deliberately doing these things to force myself to look at what I have as opposed to what I'm trying to get.
Right.
And I'm not perfect. I have my down days. I have my days when I'm like, God damn it, I just need to get one more startup investment, which is a dangerous way to think.
Because you are competitive.
I'm very competitive.
Very competitive.
And very competitive.
And that is like, I can see it in you, like this competitiveness, but this zenness, kind of like fighting. It's almost like a Jedi kind of thing. Like you want to succeed, but you also want to be calm about it.
Yeah, the internal conflict is the competitive part, because I hate, who did someone say? There's like second place is first loser. It's just like that's.
Second is last. It's Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, there we go.
If you're either
Ricky
first
Bobby.
or you're last.
Yeah, or or the Peter Thiel, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like I have grown up largely finding that to be a useful belief. Like I really feel like if you're talking yourself out of being number one, you're already sort of admitting defeat and putting in half instead of full effort. So there is that conflict where it's like, I want to be number one. Like the fact that Gil has a slightly larger syndicate fucking kills me, like every day.
It really does. Interesting.
Yeah. And I would rather not compete than be second place. Like it makes me insane. And Gil's an awesome guy. You know, it's nothing personal. It's just like, look, it's nothing personal, but I want to be number one.
You know, I've done 10 I've closed 10. I mean, when you said 5 to 8, I was like, oh my God, I've done double the number of syndicates as Tim Ferriss.
You know,
I'm twice as successful in that regard.
So,
I mean, I was just, because for me, I don't expect to be better than Tim Ferriss in anything. So,
oh, come on. I know you're fucking with me.
But it's good. You can see that competitive fire.
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
very
not
competitive.
healthy, is it?
You know, the dose makes the poison, right? And I think that you need to be able to turn it on and turn it off. That's the key.
Got it.
You need to know how and when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And for most people who get to a certain level of success, and it could be a very moderate level of success, they reach a point where it's stuck on. And that is precisely why you see these people, and we both know them, who have hundreds of millions of dollars, and they are unhappy people because they've overdeveloped the achievement mechanics in their head and the competitive mechanics so much they've almost crowded out any ability to appreciate what they have.
Right.
And that's not everybody. There's certainly some very happy, very content, very well-grounded, extremely wealthy people. They're not mutually exclusive, but it is a challenge, and I think that it's not.
Is that your biggest challenge, you think?
Yeah,
it's definitely the competitive nature.
Knowing when and how to turn that off, I think, is difficult because I love competing. I love winning. I love aggressive sports. I mean, I've written posts about, I think it's called, in praise of aggressiveness or something, with videos of Dan Gable, legendary wrestling coach. You guys have to see this video. Just go on my blog, Tim Ferriss blog. You can just Google it and search Dan Gable aggression. It's such an amazing video. But like I've just lived by that credo for so long. It's just like offense.
Right.
And
you gotta like kind of.
It's like and you know what Gable will say is he's like, you lost because you didn't want to lose, or he'll say he's like, you got a tie because that's what you wanted. You wanted a tie. You just didn't want to lose. You just didn't want to lose. You never win that way. I think that's verbatim. I've watched it a lot, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. But in a society where it's like everybody gets a trophy, I think that's actually a huge disservice to a lot of folks.
But if you've already won so much. And you have.
Yeah.
And we're talking about some of people we know maybe who are very intense and it's never enough winning.
Yeah.
They kind of miss out on those slow moments, the friendships, the breathable moments when you're writing the screenplay in Italy or you're just having wine or lunch or something and
getting my ass kicked in basketball.
Or getting your ass kicked in basketball. It's unbelievable. My God. If you guys want to see this is truly unique. I mean, if you want to see a Tim Ferriss skill that has yet to develop, it is basketball.
It's the layup, specifically the layup.
Literally, there's no words to describe how non-elegant your layup technique is. I mean, literally, it makes Philip Seymour Hoffman in Something About Polly look like Michael Jordan. When he's like Rain Man, Rain Dance, I mean, you are just missing the backboard. You're trying to look skillful.
Well, because we're playing horse and I had to do it. I had to imitate what I thought was going to be proper technique.
But this is a really
good... The layup was like if you took an orangutan and handed it a ball and just like stun gunned it towards a basket.
With you hit him with like a stun gun.
Yeah, it looked roughly like that.
Yes.
With similar results.
But it was very interesting because I could see the wheels moving where you were like, oh my God, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose to Jason Calacanis.
Well, that's the part because I knew I would never hear the fucking end of it for 3 days.
You didn't. And I was like, oh my God, Brooklyn, whoops, what's up?
Now, hold on though. Hold on. Now, in fairness, you did miss that foul shot about 14 times in a row.
I did. But then when I got in the zone, it was pretty exciting. All right, listen, everybody, we could go for 2 hours, and we did. And it's all because of the incredible hard work of my team. Let's give a big round of applause to Andrew, Jackie, Emmy Award-winning producer, Jacob, everybody, Adam, Luke, all these great people work for me. Let's give a huge round of applause for our friends at Pivotal. This is a fantastic company. They picked up the tab for everything. And most of all, Just what a tremendous performance. One for the ages, Mr. Tim Ferriss.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.